Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 1ND podcast. I'm your host, Vikash Singh, and I am joined by my co-host, Sagar. And today, we're going to be talking about the most one-sided trades in baseball. We only have, 6 total? So if this goes well, maybe we'll make it a little series.
Yeah, we really only have 6, and some of them will show our, biases. Spoiler alert, we're Rays fans. But, we can talk about some, old ones that, involve, Barry Bonds, Babe Ruth, and, bring those back just for, a cool, fun fact.
For sure. And then, how about we just jump right into it? You want to start with your first trade?
Yeah, sure. I'll go with my first one. I think yours will be a little more recent than mine, but I can just go with this trade that occurred in 2009, and it was between the Blue Jays and the Phillies. Do you know who I would be talking about?
Oh, only the greatest pitcher of all time.
Yes, sir. That would be Roy Halladay. Rest in peace.
Oh, rest in peace. I also love Randy Johnson.
So, just a little bit of a, foreground to this. I'm not really that big of a baseball guy in terms of knowing all these people. So, in my judgment, if I don't know the player's name, he's a trash player. So, this is how I'm going to break down the trade. Okay, so the Blue Jays traded away... the Blue Jays traded away Roy Halladay, who was, the face of their franchise. And in return, they got Kyle Drabek, who was a pitching prospect. I don't know his name now, so I guess he's trash. Then they got Travis d'Arnaud, who, fun fact, is playing on the Rays right now. He's a catcher.
He's on the Braves now.
He's on the... Okay, that's breaking news for me. Well, he sucked too, because I went to 2 games and he didn't do well, so he sucks. And then Michael Taylor. He was
great last season.
Hey, man, I don't know. Michael Taylor was the third guy they got. Again, I don't know who that is. Apparently, he's really fast and he's an outfielder. Good luck to him.
Michael Taylor was an all-star. He was a great player.
Okay.
For the Braves, but not to the level of one of the greatest pitchers of all time.
Exactly. So essentially, those 3 players who I severely do not like, just based off my knowledge of baseball. In return, the Phillies got Roy Halladay, right? And so he was on the Phillies for 4 total years, and in those 4 years, the first 2 on the team were the most impactful, right? So in 2010 and in 2011, wins are not, that indicative of how good a pitcher is nowadays, but again, he recorded 21 and then 19 wins, so pretty high in the win column there. Along with that, he finished first in the Cy Young race in 2010. And again, he was an all-star, and then he finished 6th in the MVP voting. And then he followed that up, again being an all-star, finishing 2nd in the Cy Young race. And then again, he was rated 9th for the MVP. So essentially, you got this amazing pitcher who could give you, on average, 20 wins a year with a really good ERA under 2.45 over both years, 2.44 in 2010 and 2.35 in 2011. And so I think that caliber of a pitcher, getting him for players who eventually went on to other teams, along with, someone like me and really not knowing who they are, I think that's a really lopsided trade, especially given the fact that Roy Halladay had a Cy Young in him, and then he finished 2nd in the Cy Young, and he was, an all-star and an MVP candidate. So for those reasons, I think this was a pretty fairly lopsided trade for the time.
Oh, definitely. And you can't forget what he brought to the team. He had that perfect game. He had that postseason no-hitter, which was almost a perfect game. Those are some amazing performances that alone, those 2 performances alone outweigh what the Blue Jays got in return.
Yeah.
With admittedly, d'Arnaud, he was not very good until he was with the Rays.
I think he was in the minor leagues, right?
He was a top prospect as well. And I believe he got traded to the Mets afterwards. And he was very highly rated, but it just never came together. But then on the Rays, he just broke out. And from there, he parlayed that into a great contract with the Braves. And, hope the best for him. Michael A. Taylor, speed demon in the outfield, great defender. And in his peak years, he was a great batter too. But I don't remember him doing much for the Blue Jays. I remember him mostly for his time with the Braves. And then, don't even remember the third guy you said. Trebek? Alex Trebek? I think he's hosting Jeopardy.
Kyle Drabek with a
Kyle
D.
Drabek. Okay.
Yeah, again, I don't know.
I've
So,
heard Trebek. Maybe it's his son now. I don't know. But I've heard that name. Maybe he's a coach now.
oh, it could be.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree with that. That is definitely a lopsided trade.
Yeah, for sure. You want to go on with yours?
Let's do it. My first trade is between the Padres and the White Sox. It was James Shields for Eric Johnson and Fernando Tatis Jr. Complete game James is what we called him here in Tampa Bay because he was a stud. He was a stud his entire career with the Rays. He even went to the World Series with them, and he was a big part of that team.
I mean, just a fun fact. I don't know if you remember. I mean, you remember this, but for me, James Shields was the first professional athlete I got an autograph from because locally in St. Pete, we were at some event, and he happened to be there, and he was a super nice dude, super receptive, and, got an autograph photo with him. So that really, like, being young at the time, like, he was one of my favorite pitchers, and he was, like, a really good role model at the time. And being my first autograph, he, like, really holds a special place in terms of, like, my rankings in terms of my favorite players.
Oh, yeah, I'm a big fan of James Shields. I remember that day at Great Explorations, I think it was.
Yeah, Great Explorations. I think that's what it's called.
It was a good time back in the day. So he's obviously still a great person. And the Rays parlayed his stellar career with the team into a great trade in its own right, but Shields actually performed after that trade because he was traded from the Rays to the Royals. I believe the Will Myers trade. And he led the Royals to a World Series in 2014, which they would lose to basically Madison Bumgarner alone. And then also because James Shields lost his 2 starts in the World Series, but we're not going to talk about that. He became a free agent after that World Series, so he never got to win a ring with the Royals because the Royals won the World Series the following season. But the Padres actually signed him to a pretty lucrative deal. I think it was $75 million over 4 years with a 5th-year option. So he was very highly touted. I mean, he was seen as the guy, the ace on a team that went to the World Series. And so he signed that deal in 2015, and then the Padres absolutely swindled the White Sox by trading him in 2016 for Eric Johnson and Fernando Tatis Jr. What made this trade so one-sided was the steep fall of James Shields, unfortunately. I mean, he was getting up there in age, but not only was it the steep fall of James Shields, but it was the meteoric rise of Fernando Tatis Jr. But we'll get on Tatis later. Shields pitched pretty decently for the Padres in his lone season with the team, but when he came to Chicago, it seemed like his command had left him. And he's known as a guy who was, a great pitcher because of his command. He didn't throw a super crazy fastball. I think it was usually in like the 90 to 94 range. But his whip and ERA, it had boomed almost immediately when he went to the White Sox, and he kind of looked like a shell of his former self. And I feel bad because all metrics just pointed him to be like the worst pitcher in the MLB at the time. However, I will say his 2018 campaign, his final one with the White Sox, actually wasn't half bad. And it was a decent season to end his career on. And I feel like people just give him such a bad rap because of how good Fernando Tatis Jr. has been. And honestly, he might have just been a victim to the juiced balls. I'll always remember him for his great command with his fastball and changeup. That's the James Shields I know, and that's why he got that $75 million contract. But 2018 was his last season. They didn't pick up his 5th-year option, and then I think he just retired. But going on to the players the Padres got, Eric Johnson, the obvious steal of the deal. Not. He didn't really do anything in the majors. Actually, he was demoted to AAA after the trade, and then when he was called up, he went 0-for-4 with a 9.15 ERA.
You actually tricked me there. I was like, hey, I don't know who Eric Johnson is, so I assumed he was good, but okay.
No, I mean, he's had an unfortunate career. He had Tommy John, and then ever since, he just hasn't been in the majors. But, I mean, man's made his money, I suppose. The golden boy of the trade is Fernando Tatis Jr. This man is the face of the Padres now, and he is only 21 years old. He's younger than the both of us. And he is the next phenom. He is the next Mike Trout type player. I'm not saying he'll be as good as Mike Trout, because that is an unrealistic expectation, because Mike Trout is the greatest player of all time.
Yeah, for a second I was like, that is blasphemous. But okay, you checked yourself.
But you know what I mean. Like, he will be the person that people will tune in to watch. He's truly, and I find it extremely strange that the White Sox would trade him before they even got a chance to see what he was all about, because they traded him without him even playing a game. They signed him as an international free agent, and I think he was 16 years old at the time. And it's not as if the White Sox were particularly competitive at the time. It's not like they needed a pitcher to get over the hump. I mean, I guess they were close to 500 every season, but like always under it. They were a 70-win team usually, to my memory. So why did they want James Shields so bad? I'm not sure. I predicted the White Sox, I think, in our previous podcast, to win their division this season. But having Tatis, oh my goodness, that just put him over the hump. You know what I mean? And imagine him manning short. I mean, no disrespect to Tim Anderson, who's he just won the batting title. He doesn't walk very much though, but hey, he gets hits and he's entertaining to watch. I love his bat flips. But with Tatis, man, they'd be undeniable contenders. So, to kind of explain how good Tatis has been, he played just 84 games last season because he was injured, but he was absolutely electric. You would watch the Padres just to watch what Tatis would do. His, like, on the base running, his power, his speed, everything is just so entertaining to watch. And so, again, he played 84 games, and in those 84 games, he had 22 home runs and 53 RBI while batting .317. In 84 games, he had a WAR of 4.2. Some players don't have that WAR in their entire careers, and yet this man just had it in his first season in half a season. He did strike out quite a bit, and he could probably do to get his on-base percentage up a little bit, but that's just me trying to nitpick on a 21-year-old's first season in the major leagues. So it does seem as though the White Sox found that generational talent and then traded him for 3 years of absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty terrible. For Tatis, what do you think his most valuable asset would be? Like, is it
offense or defense?
Offensively, would you say it's his strength at the plate, or do you say he's pretty smart with base running, or what do you say what's the must-watch factor of him? Is it just his total game?
It's his total game for sure. I don't know if he's smart on the base paths. He is very daring on the base paths, I'll say. But hey, some of his steals are amazing. He stole home last season. That was fun to watch.
That's pretty rare.
Oh yeah. But it's definitely going to be his bat. He's a shortstop, and so these days shortstops are just crazy powerful and athletic. But I'll say mostly it's his bat, because that's where the longevity is going to come. He's a bigger guy. I don't know if he'll play shortstop for his entire career, but I mean, he's definitely good enough to push Manny Machado out of shortstop, even though Manny only wants to play shortstop. So he'll be fun to watch, and it'll definitely be his bat that will carry him his whole career.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. That seems like they basically got a steal in that trade. And, I mean, it's a shame what happened to James Shields, but, just reality. As you get older, you're going to decline. So, no surprise there. Yeah. All right, I'll move on to my next trade. I'm going to have you guess again. So, it was in 2006, and it was between the Rays and the cheating team, the Astros.
The Rays and the Astros.
2006.
06, eh?
The Astros got Aubrey Huff.
The racist.
Was he racist? Oh yeah, I think there was some controversy about him recently too, where he wasn't invited to something. I may be confusing him with someone else.
So the Giants are having their 10-year World Series reunion for the 2010 World Series.
Yes.
They'll have another one in their 2012 World Series and the 2014 World Series. But he was actually the lead bat on that team. He was the best batter on the team, and he wasn't invited because of what he said. He's pretty racist. He's pretty homophobic. He's pretty sexist. And a lot of Republicans are trying to spin it as if it's because he's Republican, but all the other Republicans have been invited. Madison Bumgarner, to name one. And so that's just that's just a reach. It's because he's just been such a strange character online, and I don't blame the Giants for not wanting him around that organization at all. He's kind of done his time, and he's obviously, I don't know, maybe did he play football? He's got a little CTE in him.
I mean, I think I remember one exchange on Twitter I saw, which was really funny, where he was complaining about like this generation having participation trophies. Going off on a little tangent here, but then someone pulled up his stats like during those World Series runs, and it was like 0 for 2 at the plate because he barely played, and he gets the ring. So I found that funny, like a little revenge there. But yeah,
that is funny.
So
hey, you can't say that sort of stuff on Twitter, man. People will dig stuff up.
Yeah, exactly. So the Rays again geniuses for trading away this racist. Allegedly, I don't want to be sued. And they got in return the GOAT, my favorite player on the Rays for his entirety of him being there, Ben Zobrist. So
that is a pretty one-sided trade. I love Ben Zobrist.
That's a very one-sided trade. So Ben Zobrist, earlier in his career, especially when he was on the Rays, I was really, entrenched in like looking at statistics and stuff. I was much more heavily invested in the game than I am right now. And I always remember him being so underrated. I think at some point they had like a statistic and he was like the most underrated player in baseball. And, eventually that changed obviously, but his entire...
One thing to mention with the Rays is that they were so ahead of their time in terms of analytics and things of that sort, so that they had players like Ben Zobrist that were underrated at the time, but players like him now are getting paid so much. They're known because of the advent of analytics and how much teams value it now.
I mean, yeah, for sure. And I guess it's just a testament to how successful they were and, them having the World Series run in 2008. Ben Zobrist was definitely a contributing factor. He's a reason they were so good over the, from 2008 to like 2013, 2014 is when he unfortunately left. I don't know the details about that trade. But he
went to go win a World Series with the Royals, and then he left the Royals to go win a World Series with the Cubs. Wherever he goes, World Series follows. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, dude. He's the GOAT. So, yeah, his tenure over the Rays, shaky start in the beginning. His batting average was not so great. 2007, his batting average was actually 155. He only played 31 games, but, pretty average. But, the Rays didn't give up. And eventually, he went on to bat averages like 297. I see a 275 in there. Career average is 260. He's had some pretty decent seasons lately, too. I think in 2018, he batted 305. And he played 139 games, so still consistently good. And one of the things I loved about Ben Zobrist was that he was like a jack of all trades. I remember going to the games, and it was always exciting to see which position he was going to play next. At some point, I used to joke with my friends, like, he's going to play pitcher and catcher at the same time. Because, he was, such, the perfect utility knife. You could plug him in anywhere. And given Madden being a genius of a coach, he utilized him to his full extent. And, he was an all-star for a few seasons. He definitely should have been an all-star for more seasons than he was. I think that just due to, our fan base not being that big, and the All-Star being kind of a popularity contest, and him being underrated. So those all three factors probably combined to not give him as many All-Stars as he deserves. He did, finish in the MVP race 8th in 2009. And I think, that's the year he batted 297, so close to 300. And, he's just an amazing player. And the fact that we got him back in 2006 for Aubrey Huff, who essentially fell off. I don't remember him doing too much after the trade. He barely played. His averages were low. He batted.
I don't even remember him on the Astros, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, so after 2006, I don't even think he ended up on the Astros, but immediately went to Baltimore for 2 years. So the Astros gave away one of the best utility players, one of the most underrated players for that 5-6 year span for Aubrey Huff, who they didn't even keep. So that was definitely a really lopsided trade. And there's a big bias here because Ben Zobrist is probably my most favorite Ray of all time. And so, yeah, I think that's a very lopsided trade, and the Rays definitely pulled a fast one on the cheaters.
And I think one reason why Ben Zobrist was so criminally underrated is because of the power statistics, because that was all the rave back when he was playing. He didn't hit those crazy home run numbers. He was decent at them, but he wasn't amazing. In Juice Ball era, he probably is gonna be. He's fine. I mean, if he were in his prime during the Juice Ball era, I think he'd be an all-star every single season, just because he'd be hitting dingers, he'd be getting on base more, having that high average. But yeah, he didn't really bring in those runs. He didn't hit those homers, but he'd always be on base. He'd always set people up. He was a great guy to put one or two, and then Evan Longoria would come in and then hit him right in. So it's like Ben Zobrist's impact to the Rays was immense, and the fact that he's still so many people's favorite players to this day, and it just shows how good he was on the team.
I mean, yeah, and just on the fact about the on-base percentage, like, over the 10-year span, I don't see him being a tick below 350, except for one season when he was 346, right? So he's consistently good, consistently valuable, and the Rays definitely stole one from the Astros.
Definitely. But I'll move on to my second trade.
Go for it.
Which, in some vein, it was like the Rays' worst nightmare. It was between the Athletics and the Blue Jays. You don't really see the Athletics making bad trades. They're much like the Rays. They try to offload their good talent while they can. But this one just didn't make sense from the get-go. It was Josh Donaldson for Brett Lowry, Kendall Graveman, Sean Nolan, and Franklin Barreto. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't know any of those last four people.
Nope.
But I know you know Josh Donaldson.
I definitely know Josh Donaldson.
Like I said, this was such a strange trade from the jump, because Josh Donaldson had just come off a season where he finished 8th in MVP voting. And Billy Beane, always trying to think ahead, he traded him while he was piping hot. But it did not seem like he got any sort of good haul. And that was evident literally immediately. Because I remember when the Blue Jays got Donaldson, I felt like they got a steal. I was like, why didn't the Rays do this? The Rays could have easily gotten Josh Donaldson for even better. Just giving up some decent player for Josh Donaldson, it seems, would have been enough. But I guess Billy Beane saw something with these players. Maybe his eyes got worse over the years. But with the Blue Jays, he made such an immediate impact that he messed around and won an MVP in his very first season with the team. And then I don't think they made the playoffs that season. But I personally think Mike Trout should have won that MVP. But, I mean, I digress. I think Mike Trout should win the MVP every season because he is the GOAT. He should have won the MVP when Miguel Cabrera had a triple crown. That's how good Mike Trout was. Anyway. But he led the Blue Jays to the playoffs in his second season, I believe, where they looked pretty promising. I think they made it to the ALCS, and they fell short to the Indians. And I think the Indians got swept after that. But I still remember Edwin Encarnacion in the wild card game that year. He had a walk-off home run. And, man, pissed me off. But it was also really cool because it's Edwin Encarnacion. And I think they were playing the Orioles too. But yeah, that was the year the Indians advanced to the World Series. And they lost. But it seemed as if the Blue Jays were getting over this hump. It seemed as if the Blue Jays were actually going to capitalize on the promise that they always seem to have. And in his first 3 years with the Blue Jays, I believe he only played 3.5 with the Blue Jays anyway, Donaldson racked up over 110 home runs while batting around 290 every single season. And in those 3 seasons, he brought in exactly 300 RBI combined.
Oh my God.
And
that's
man. Yeah, those are 3 great seasons. And then in the middle of his 4th season, they traded him away and didn't really get much in return, but that's because he was going to be a free agent right after. And I believe they traded him to the Indians, funny enough. And the Indians only got like half a season out of him before he became a free agent and went to the Braves, I believe. May be wrong. But as for the players that the Athletics got, they didn't accomplish much of anything. while Josh Donaldson was over in Toronto bringing down the rain, the A's prized possession in the trade, Franklin Barreto, was still in the minors. And so, sometimes these trades take a while to, show the fruits of their labor. But he's now played in 3 seasons. He's 24, and he has been used pretty sparingly, especially for someone who is seen as a centerpiece of such a huge trade at the time. His best season was 2018, but his stats, oh man, he hit 233 with an on-base percentage of 253.
Oh, okay, that's pretty bad.
And he hit 5 home runs and 16 RBIs.
How many games did he play?
So he only had 69 plate appearances total.
Nice.
And he's still young. He has plenty of he's still young. He has plenty of time to develop. But it's kind of strange how the centerpiece of a trade just hasn't produced so far, and he's had his chances. Now, I will say this season, I do believe he has his best chance of actually starting. He's never been a starter yet. He's mostly been like a base runner, a defensive specialist. But Jed Lowry is now gone. I think they just traded Jurickson Profar. And so that middle infield is open for Barreto to try and, it might be his time to shine. And he's also run out of minor league options, so I think that'll help him stay in the majors. So we'll see what he can do. He's 24. There's plenty of people who have, blossomed after that age. I mean, I think Aaron Judge came up when he was 26, 27. So I'm like, he's got time, But right now, he hasn't looked good at all. There's no signs of him looking good at any time in the near future. Maybe they need to get some trash cans in the dugout. The A's also got Brett Lowry, who essentially at the time was kind of a throw-in because Billy Beane wanted someone to man the hot corner after Donaldson left. And so he was like, all right, throw in Brett Lowry and we have a deal. And so they threw him in, and he wasn't bad, but he wasn't great either with the A's. He stuck around for just 1 season, and then they shipped him to the White Sox for 2 prospects that I couldn't even tell you. In his only season with the A's, he hit 260, and he hit 16 home runs over 149 games. Not good, not bad.
I mean, that's pretty serviceable. Like, he's a serviceable
It's serviceable,
guy.
right? Yeah. But like, for trading away a guy who just won, who just finished 8th in the MVP voting, then you go to Brett Lowry the next season. It's like, why did we even have to trade him, right? And so you also expected a little bit more from Lowry just because he had this sort of, not to say pedigree, but it seemed as if he had promise. But the White Sox released him in 2017, so a year after, and I don't think he's been in the league ever since, which is kind of perplexing to me. He is not bad. He's just not good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
sometimes it
just like
happens.
average, But again, when you're trading away elite for average, that's definitely lopsided.
Exactly.
Plus, I think, just to chime in here, I think sometimes when you're using sabermetrics, maybe you go too overboard with the analytics. And when you have such a valuable asset, maybe you're thinking that these people who you've clearly analyzed, there's something there, right? And maybe they didn't really know that maybe the metrics were pointing to Donaldson not continuing on his trajectory. Who knows? And those times require more discretion, like, I guess, like from an eye test, in my opinion, not solely like analytical. And maybe sometimes analytics messes up, and that's just reality.
I honestly don't think it was a problem with the analytics. Josh Donaldson was in his prime when they traded him. And then the players that they traded for, they had a little promise, but even at the time, it just did not seem like a good trade. And usually at the time, it's like, maybe it's a okay trade. This guy looks good. This guy looks like he has promise. But at that time, nobody thought it was a good trade at all. And I don't think you can go overboard with sabermetrics. I think you can misinterpret it. And maybe the Athletics did that. I just think it was Billy Beane. I'm not saying he isn't the GM that he used to be. That is what I'm saying, actually. He
Okay.
didn't evaluate these players well at all. I think their scouting needed to change. I think maybe they did overhaul their scouting afterwards, but it just didn't make sense. And Donaldson had more years on the plate on his contract with the Athletics, so I don't know why they rushed to trade him after an 8th place MVP. They could have gotten and the rankings of the prospects weren't even high either, so it just didn't make sense at all. If you look at what the Red Sox just got for Mookie Betts, I mean, you're comparing apples to oranges at that point.
Plus the fact that Mookie Betts is on an expiring deal, so the Dodgers have to sign him long term.
Exactly. And so it kind of proves players are willing to trade for like 1 year of a MVP caliber player. Especially if that Josh Donaldson was on the Athletics. There's not much opportunity when you're on the Athletics to bring in RBIs. Not saying that they're bad, just saying that at the time they weren't a team that you feared, and except when Josh Donaldson came to bat. They were a decent team, obviously, but when you go to a team like the Blue Jays who had more help, then you're like, okay, Josh Donaldson will be even better player on this team. But the last 2 players in that trade, Kendall Graveman has not been good at all. His ERA last season was 7.60.
Oh my goodness.
With a 1.66 whip. I mean, he only played 7 games. But there's a reason he only played 7 games, if you know what I'm saying. And then the final piece was Sean Nolan, and didn't even hear. I don't know who this guy is. No disrespect to Sean.
Sean's probably a good guy.
Yeah, I'm sure he's fine, but not in Major League Baseball because right after the trade, I think he was put on waivers and he's a free agent. And so, just kidding. He made 6 starts with the A's in 2015, gave up 17 runs in 29 innings.
Nice, dude. That's really good.
I mean, hey, he's a Major League Baseball player. We can't say that, but when comparing him to the rest of the field, he has not been great. So, best of luck to Sean, but you're trash.
Well, you got to take it out on Sean, man.
I don't know, man. I'm just annoyed that the Blue Jays got such a good player for absolutely nothing.
Yeah, that's a really terrible trade.
It coincided with a time when the Rays were not good as well, so it's like,
just
man, it's really annoying.
I feel that.
And Josh Donaldson was a big reason.
I feel like I tuned out baseball for like 5 years, basically when they were trash. So,
unfortunately,
the Rays are never trash. I
stuck around. No, those years they were trash. I will say. I think it's because those were such strange years. When you think of the AL East, most people will think Yankees, Red Sox, but the Rays are always up there. The Rays are always contenders. The Rays are always a team to mention, even though they have that low salary cap. But those years were the years, I think, so the wild card game, like I said previously, was the Blue Jays versus the Orioles. Those are teams you don't really expect in the wild card game often. So, it's kind of a bizarro world when those 2 teams are, having promise. But, hey, that being said, the Blue Jays look good this year. The Red Sox might be bad. The Yankees are going to be good. The Rays are going to be good. This is going to be another competitive division besides the Orioles.
Yeah, well, Orioles trash. I think we agree.
Oh, yeah. I think everyone should agree on that.
All right, moving on from that, I'll focus on my last trade. This is an interesting one. It's an old one, actually. It's nothing recent. So this trade occurred in 1987. Do you, sir, know a man named Doyle Alexander?
I have no recollection of a man of that name.
Well, I heard from him the first time when I was doing research for this podcast. So, well, the Detroit Tigers acquired him from the Braves, and the Braves ended up getting some double-A pitcher. He was a righty.
Some random guy.
His name was John Smoltz. You know, the guy who pitched for 20 years, had over 200 starts, 150 saves. Yeah, that guy. So, just fun fact, Doyle Alexander played... he played 2 more years. He played 1988 and 1989, and oh man, his ERA was above 4.2 each time. So, Doyle, sorry my man, but you kind of sucked. And so, yeah, John Smoltz. Let's talk about this guy. Okay, whenever you're on a team for 20 years, that means you've had a level of greatness and you've consistently performed at the highest level that long. There's something inherently that's like something that separates you there, right? Being able to perform for that extended period of time is something that's really hard to do in any sport. I mean, look at LeBron James. He's in year 17 and he's playing at an MVP level. Like, that's the kind of play this guy was doing. And he was on the team for 20 years. And, you know, he made the change. He went from a starter to being a closer. And he recorded 154 saves, actually. And including in 2002, he had 55 saves. So, just for context, the trade happened in 1987. In 2002, he had 55 saves. So, if you're talking about, like, return on investment, oh my goodness. You give up a guy named Doyle for a dude who was a clutch starter for you and then a clutch closer who had 55 saves. So, this trade is, like, probably one of the most lopsided in MLB history. I
will say,
yeah. What?
I'd rather have Jack Doyle than whoever that Doyle was because he seems like he was pretty trash. I do remember Smoltz. I mean, obviously, I wasn't around when he was playing, really, besides his later years. But I think he was a starter, then a reliever, then a starter, and then a reliever. But he should have retired after he was done with the Braves.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He definitely should have. He played for the Braves all the way until 2008. So he was 41 at the time, and then he went to Toronto, went to Boston, and went to St. Louis. Didn't really have that much success. Was in the minor leagues, so.
I don't remember him on Toronto.
I could be wrong about that.
That's okay.
What's the initial TOT? Do you know?
Total.
Oh.
And so I think he played for two teams
That makes sense.
in the same season, and that might be his total. Maybe he played for Toronto. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? But yeah,
TOT. I think it's
the Braves got 20 years of service from this dude, from 1988 all the way to 2008, and he won the Cy Young, I believe, in 1997. Yeah, 1997 was when he won the Cy Young, and he had an ERA that was, it was 2.94, but under 3 during these years is probably considered good. Do you know when? I mean, again, I'm not that much of a baseball historian, so I don't know when steroids were the thing and like when batters just started abusing pitchers left and right.
That was the time.
Okay, so 2.94 is really impressive, especially in 1997.
I mean, he was part of that amazing core of pitchers that the Braves had at the time when they just won NL East after NL East after NL East. It was Smoltz, Glavine, Maddox. It was just those 3 pitchers dominated. And once again, I never got to see it. Unfortunate, but reading about it, seeing their stats, seeing the highlights, it seems like that was a great time to just watch baseball. I mean, you have people taking steroids, hitting 70-something home runs. I think that was in the 2000s, but still 70-something home runs. And then you have people like these pitchers still thriving at the time. Makes you think, what would they do in this baseball? Well, maybe not this baseball era, but the period between the juice ball era and the steroids era when pitchers were dominating. I wonder how people like Smoltz would fare.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Plus, okay, so again, this is me not knowing that much baseball. But what do you get the Silver Slugger award for?
If you're the best batter at that position.
Oh,
so since he played in the NL, I am assuming he was the best batter.
Yes, sir. He got the Silver Slugger in 1997.
It's a great award to win as a pitcher. That means you rake.
Yeah.
Just like Zach Greinke, Madison Bumgarner, those players. Like sometimes it's funny. Actually, I saw a video recently. A little tangent. Zach Greinke was on the Arizona Diamondbacks, and then they had a catcher. Forget his name. He is so good at defense. He is the premier defensive catcher in the league, but he is the worst batter there is. But he gets so many plate appearances because of how good he is behind the plate. he makes such a difference that it doesn't reflect in the sabermetrics yet. I mean, it does slightly, but you don't understand how this guy keeps getting jobs after job after job. And it's funny, if you look at the stats, Zach Greinke was a better batter than that catcher. But Zach Greinke loved that catcher so much that he wanted him behind the plate every single time he pitched. And that's just an interesting tidbit. Now I need to know his name. You can continue.
Yeah, okay. So just, again, a little brief history over his career. Consistent all-star. Been on the all-star team at least 5 times. Finished first in the Cy Young. Correction, that was 1996, the year I was born. And he was up there in the Cy Young Award many years down the road, too. As late as 2006, he finished 7th in the Cy Young poll. So this guy was good, even all the way till the end of his tenure with the Braves. So again, the fact that you can get a 20-year guy who is a consistent all-star, polls in the MVP, Silver Slugger, absolute great hitter for that 1 year, probably, gets one Cy Young and up there for the Cy Young Award many years out of his career for a dude named Doyle Alexander, who only had an ERA over 4 and played 2 more years after the trade. This was definitely one of the most lopsided trades in MLB history.
You want to talk about a lopsided trade?
Oh, yes, sir.
Let me tell you.
I think I know where you're going.
The most lopsided trade in the history of history. Are you ready?
Go for it.
Mr. Krabs traded SpongeBob for 62 cents.
Oh, my dude. You're bringing up bad memories, man.
How could you do such a thing? You know you messed up when Squidward vouches for you. Vouches for SpongeBob, I should say. 62 cents to the Flying Dutchman for SpongeBob's soul? And SpongeBob was so happy. He's like, oh, Mr. Krabs would never trade me. Oh, really? 62 cents. Oh, my goodness. All right, that's the end of the podcast. Thank you. I'm just kidding.
He should perform at the World Series.
Who should?
SpongeBob.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah,
but let me say what I think is the most one-sided trade, in my opinion, in recent history, but also in MLB history. And it also involves the Tampa Bay Rays, so it makes me really happy to say Chris Archer. Oh, it's between the Rays and the Pirates. I think everybody knows already. It's Chris Archer for Tyler Glasnow, Austin Meadows, and Shane Baz. Now, this was such an amazing trade from the get-go. And my sister and I, we were sad to see Archer go because he's such a clubhouse guy. But at the same time, he just hadn't been producing.
Fun fact, I met Chris Archer at Chipotle once. That is all.
Hey, that's awesome. He's a man at Chipotle. But he had always been trade talks, since probably year 3. Because the Rays obviously weren't going to be able to afford him. But then they had actually given him a contract, and he had taken a nice team-friendly deal, but I think it's mostly because he hadn't performed to the level at which everyone expected. In his early years, he had a few great seasons, amazing seasons, but it always seemed as if he was trying to live up to those few seasons. And he had the injury bug here and there, but at the same time, he always was a man of promise, and he wouldn't be bad, he just wouldn't be great. And that's what everyone expected him to be. He was the ace of the Rays, but every single year it just seemed like there was another pitcher that was the actual ace, and he was the, de facto ace just because of who he was. But I was ready for a trade. And I was ready for a big trade because it always seems like it was coming. And it seemed like it was coming for the last 5 years. But I never thought we'd get such an amazing haul. I remember thinking that I wanted the Rays to get Jameson Taillon at the time because it just seemed like he was better. But then I looked into the stats, and Tyler Glasnow, he was younger, and although he wasn't performing in the majors, it just his stuff was nasty. And then all the underlying numbers were just in his favor. So at that point, I said, okay, the Rays are smarter than I. The Rays did more research than I, and they got this amazing player in Tyler Glasnow. And this was a home run from the get-go. And when it was announced, it was just Chris Archer for Tyler Glasnow and Austin Meadows with a player to be named later. And that player to be named later ended up being Shane Baz, who, he's not in the majors yet. He's in single A right now. But that dude is nasty. And when he comes up, he will be a stud. And I'll talk about him later. I'll talk about him right now. He's only 20 years old. He's currently in single A, but his stuff is amazing. Obviously, he's young, single A. He doesn't have the greatest control yet, so his ERA numbers are kind of high. They're in like the 4s, the 3s, the 4s, which isn't terrible. But once he gets control of his amazing arsenal, he'll be a great pitcher in the near future for the Rays. He'll think of David Price in 07-08 when he was a relief pitcher, and he was just lights out. I think that's who Shane Baz could be. He could be a starting pitcher, but I see him as this amazing generational closer, hopefully. Obviously, I'm hyping him up without him proving much, but I gotta be hopeful. I'm a Rays fan. But yeah, let's go to the marquee talents of the trade. Tyler Glasnow. Dude, this man was absolutely lights out when he was healthy. And in the beginning of the season when he was healthy, he was the leader in Cy Young for the Cy Young Award. Before, if he hadn't gotten hurt, he, I think, would have ran away with the Cy Young this season. Now, okay, it's a limited sample size, but Tyler Glasnow finished with a 1.78 ERA in 60 innings. He struck out 76 pitchers in those 60 innings, and he only walked 14. His whip was 0.86, and he didn't play against no scrubs. He was playing against the Yankees. He was playing against the Red Sox. He was playing against the Astros. Now, we know what the Astros did to him in the postseason the second time they saw him. But, I mean, they just took advantage of him. He's a young pitcher, tipping pitches. It happens. Unfortunately, the Rays couldn't come back. I think the Rays would have won the World Series had he not tipped those pitches, had they won that game. If it was a 7-game series, I think the Rays would have destroyed the Astros, destroyed the Yankees, destroyed the Nationals. I digress. We're not talking about what ifs. We're talking about what happened. The Rays got Tyler Glasnow. This man has always been a strikeout machine, and he's, in the beginning with the Pirates, he walked quite a bit, but he's limited his walks completely now. And I think it's not even, the Rays didn't change him in terms of his stuff. They changed him in terms of his confidence. Because with the Pirates, he had lost that confidence. He just wasn't the man that he could have been. He always had that amazing fastball. And, the Rays, they develop great pitchers all the time. And when Glasnow came to the Rays, I believe he was talking to Blake Snell. And when talking to Blake Snell, he realized that all he needed was confidence in himself. That's how Blake Snell got the Cy Young. Blake Snell was always a great pitcher too, but the Rays instilled that confidence in him. And, they tweaked a little thing here and there, but they developed such a great attitude and great pitchers. And so all Glasnow needed was that confidence. He is 6'8".
I didn't know he was that tall.
He is enormous, dude. Oh my Lanta, he is a spectacle, one may say. And he realized, when he came to the Rays, he realized nobody could touch his fastball. His crazy fastball, his nasty curve, everything about his whole arsenal is disgustingly beautiful to watch. I love Tyler Glasnow, and I love how him coming to Tampa Bay has not only revitalized his career, but it's also just a mental switch for a stud like him. And hopefully he can get a clean bill of health next season, win that Cy Young. The Rays have 3 Cy Young contenders on one team. I hope Tyler Glasnow can lead this team to a World Series. No more tipping pitches to the Astros. Tipping pitches, I will say, that's not cheating. The Astros just studied the pitcher very well, and he gave up 4 runs, I believe, in the first inning, again in Game 5 of the ALDS, which is why, and the Rays couldn't come back. They almost did. They didn't. But yeah, with a rotation of with a healthy Blake Snell, Charlie Morton, and a healthy Glasnow, John Smoltz, who? Greg Maddux, who? You know what I'm saying? The Braves pitcher got nothing on this Rays rotation.
I feel like, we've been in this position before where if we have a clean bill of health, we're there. I can see us in the series. So,
Oh yeah.
it just, we've been unlucky with those injuries, and hopefully,
There was a
fingers
portion
crossed.
of last season where the only starting pitcher, and our rotation has 5 pitchers, there was only one healthy starting pitcher in the entire rotation. That was Charlie Morton.
Yeah, that's a rip.
You're unlucky when stuff like that happens. And that's not even to mention Brent Honeywell, who, unfortunately, Tommy John, all these other injuries, hopefully he can come back. And if he's that 4th starter, oh my goodness, this is going to be a fun team to watch. But that's not even to mention Ryan Yarbrough. He's a great pitcher who thrives with an opener. And McKay, he's a way better pitcher than he is a batter. So, good luck the rest of the league. But, I'm going to stop gushing over the Rays. Just kidding. I'm just going to stop gushing over their pitching staff because now I got to move on to Austin Meadows. This guy, also an absolute stud. And when I say stud, he is a stud. He could get MVP votes as early as next season. Actually, just kidding. He finished 14th in MVP voting last season. Guess how many full seasons he's played in the MLB thus far?
Like 1, maybe?
1. That last season was his first full MLB season. Finished 14th in MVP voting. The man absolutely rakes. And I've had the privilege to see some of his absolute bombs down the right field line. Were you there? I think
I was at a game where Meadows went off. He was really good.
Right, and that is a spectacle to watch.
Oh yeah, for sure.
This is Meadows. I think he is another one of those generational type talents if he can develop with the Rays. And so in his first full season with the team, with the Rays, he hit .291 with 33 home runs and 89 RBI.
Oh my goodness.
And let me tell you, he wasn't healthy the entire season.
Yeah.
He missed maybe 30, 40 games. And so those numbers are nasty. His on-base sat at 364. And hopefully next season he can draw a few more walks. And now the Rays, they have this super deep outfield with such amazing players. Yet Austin Meadows is at the top of all of them. Now, there are defensive studs in the outfield who, I don't think Meadows could touch. Kevin Kiermaier, Manuel Margot, Hunter Renfroe, even Arozarena. But maybe Meadows could even step up his game defensively because of all these other players. They can probably give him some tips. But that's not to say he's bad at fielding. He's pretty decent at that too. So, honestly, I cannot wait for this upcoming Rays season. I cannot wait to see what he does. Glasnow is only 26. And Austin Meadows is only 24. You just turned 24.
Yep. Austin
Meadows is 24.
I'm just trying to, so we've talked about these trades and you look to the other side. I'm just trying to put myself in the mentality the Pirates had when they pulled the trigger on this trade. Like, what went through their head to think this was a good idea? Like, do you have any clue? Okay. You think they just thought
I haven't
Chris
even
Archer
talked about Chris Archer yet,
that
right?
good?
So, essentially, talking about Chris Archer, this trade was great irrespective of Archer's performance, right? The Rays got these generational talents. The Rays got these Cy Young contender and an MVP contender, and maybe even one of the a great reliever for the future. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but unfortunately, his performance on the Pirates made this trade even more one-sided, right? He had been showing signs of regression in seasons prior with the Rays, but he always had that promise, like I was saying before, which is why the Pirates chose to trade for him. Now, I think it was regarded by the entire league that the Pirates had given up maybe a little too much at the time.
Just a little bit.
But at the time, it just also seemed like Chris Archer was still that ace-type player. He's still that amazing clubhouse guy. And he'll always, even to this day, he'll still stick up for his teammates, and I think that's amazing. But he's also not been healthy with the Pirates. To say he hit 200 innings in 3 of his first 5 seasons, and with the Rays, and in one of those 5 seasons he hit 194. So essentially 200 innings in 4 of the 5 seasons.
Okay.
But on his first full season with the Pirates, he only pitched 119 innings.
Oh man.
And so he hasn't been dealt a clean bill of health, right? I mean, we're also getting into this era of juiced balls. And so you see his number. He's always given up that long ball, but it just got worse on the Pirates. But like in those 119 innings, he just wasn't particularly good. He had a 5.19 ERA and a 1.41 WHIP. And there were some games where I saw he had like 6 innings pitched, 14 Ks, and then they'll trot him out for the 7th inning and they'll give up 3 home runs.
Oh, man.
And it's like, come on, learn. You know who he is. Right now he's having trouble. Take him out. You've got relief pitchers. He was seen as this player. Like, the Pirates were decent. They're always, like, decent contenders. And it was seen as if Chris Archer would be the player that would put him over that hump. And it didn't seem as if Glasnow or Meadows would... Well, Meadows seemed like he would impact the game immediately. But it didn't... Like, Glasnow seemed like he was declining with the Pirates. And he just had promise. So... And it seemed like Archer had been decent and that he had even more promise. Now, we know how it all went. Tyler Glasnow is the Cy Young candidate, and Chris Archer is just having the terrible time. But it just goes to show, the Pirates did not develop Tyler Glasnow well at all. He came to the Rays and immediately became a stud because of the pitching staff that they have here. The coaching staff, I should say. And the pitching staff. Blake Snell gave him some great advice. And Charlie Morton. And so Tyler Glasnow was seen as this person who was declining. He was once a top prospect, but he had played in the majors for 2-3 years at the time, and he just kept giving up runs. He kept letting people on base, had a high ERA, high WHIP, and he would always strike people out. That's something unquestioned. He would always strike people out, but he was never seen as this Cy Young caliber player until he came to the Rays, and then he just had those amazing performances, and he was blowing people out of the water. So that was one reason the Pirates were willing to let go of Tyler Glasnow, because he didn't seem very good. It seemed like they would be getting Austin Meadows, and then Tyler Glasnow as a throw-in. And then at the time, people thought, oh, Tyler Glasnow, maybe he'll be a good middle relief guy or, a fourth guy in the rotation. No, he is a number one. He isn't Cy Young. He is an ace. And that's just props to the Rays, right? And even if it's Austin Meadows for Chris Archer straight up, it still would have been a one-sided trade.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
You know what I'm saying? So, like, Shane Baz, I don't know why they threw him in. He's a great pitcher. He has great stuff. So, like I said, Chris Archer, he had trouble with the long ball with the Rays, and I believe they were exploited by the juice balls, exploited by the fact that he was injured. That strikeout stuff is still there. And when you are that strikeout type of pitcher, you always have that promise. Like Tyler Glasnow, I think that's why the Rays traded for him over Jameson Taillon. Tyler Glasnow would blow people away, but he would have issues with, his confidence. He wouldn't be throwing in, the top of the zone because he didn't think he's blowing people away. He's like, oh, a high fastball? No, I'm not going to throw that. Then he came to the Rays. Oh, a high fastball? Heck yeah, I'm going to throw that. And so you just see that mental shift with Tyler Glasnow. And I think, back to Chris Archer, he still has promise. I think he can still be a serviceable pitcher. But, the facts are the facts. The Pirates gave up far too much for Chris Archer. He is, I think, 31 or 32, 30 to 32 right now. And he's a free agent after the 2021 season. I'm rooting for him, but, man, the trade just did not make sense for the Pirates.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's definitely going to go down in history if the 3 guys we got, pan out to be amazing. And I'm sure they will be. If that happens, yeah, this trade, one of the worst ever.
The worst ever.
Yeah, it could end up that way.
I can't wait to see what Tyler Glasnow and Austin Meadows can do this upcoming season. I think the Rays are going to be great, and I think they're going to be great because of those 2 players. I'm sad to see Chris Archer's performance, but even if he had been, like, a 3 ERA pitcher who got, 12 wins, he still wouldn't hold a candle to what the Rays got, and it still would have been a lopsided trade.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and that's literally because of Tyler Glasnow. We knew Austin Meadows was going to be great. We knew he had power. We knew who Austin Meadows was. We didn't know Tyler Glasnow, but now we do. We know he is goated.
For sure. And I think that concludes our podcast. We both discussed our 3 trades. Is there anything else you want to add?
I'd like to say, if you guys like this podcast, let us know, because there are plenty of trades that we could talk about. We just went over baseball trades. We can go over football. We can go over basketball. We can go over more baseball trades. Whatever you guys like, let us know. We're willing to talk about it. You know I talk a lot. You know Sauger likes talking too. So we'll talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess that concludes this episode of the 1ND podcast. Please make sure to follow us on all the social media at 1NDcast. And we'll see you next time.
Peace.